Our next speaker is going to take us into the data layer, into the platform layer. Nikita Shamgunov has worn many hats as a founder and investor and now VP at Databricks, which I'm sure, again, a company that doesn't need much introduction. So Nikita, please, all yours.
Very excited to be here. Today I'm going to talk about how AI is changing infrastructure, right? So we all have seen the rise and changes of infrastructure, especially like we went from data center to a cloud, and then it's kind of the same thing, but somehow it's different, right? Cloud made things different. Cloud introduced new services that kind of like existed before, but then the packaging became new, things like S3, EC2, all this good stuff. But now we're live in the AI era, and that creates another, like changes the requirements of what infrastructure should be. So here in this talk, we'll explore it a little bit and see how AI is changing and our infrastructure landscape. Let me introduce myself first. So my name's Nikita, and I have been building databases my whole life. So I started with working at Microsoft on the product called SQL Server. People know what SQL Server is still? Yeah? Okay, cool. So it's still a thing, right? But yeah, so many people still use it. You're probably running my code, small portion, because this is a gigantic product. And so that's where I started to work on systems. And then I founded a company called Single Store. I ran it between 2011 2020, so it's like 9 years of my life. Eventually, the company was sold last year to private equity, which is the death of software. But it worked out, and I learned a few skills. And then I started another company called Neon. What's interesting about the creation of Neon is I started it while working also at venture. So I was at a place called Coastal Ventures, investing in lots of startups. At that time, I thought, I will never build another database company. I'm done like working on databases. And then went into venture to just kind of open up my aperture and see what else is in the tech industry. But then there was one idea that I could not unthink. So by the way, if you're thinking about something and you cannot stop thinking about it, there's probably something very important happening. By spending so much time in the database industry, I was like, why is nobody doing this? And then, well, surely somebody will. Like the world is so big and this is so obvious. Like somebody should do that. But then nobody was doing this. And so I walked into Coastal Ventures and I thought, okay, well, let me become an investor. But this thing is like, I really want this to exist. And maybe we should incubate this. And we started working on this in 2021. The moment we put an open source repo on GitHub, GitHub stars started to go up. The moment we launched it, we launched the website first. It was #1 on Hacker News for a while, and then we started to get signups on the wait list. The moment we opened it up, the traffic arrived and just started to go up and up and up. And then something really magical happened, and we call it agents, right? At some point, we built this technology for humans, and what Neon is really just Postgres, and it's serverless, and it's really neatly packaged. It's like very easy to use. And suddenly the user changed. The user changed from being a human to some sort of agent, some sort of automation. And on the back end, we started to see quote unquote agentic traffic exceeding the human traffic. So that got me thinking, that got me to step back and think, oh, what is changing in general? We seem to have built a piece of infrastructure that fits into this new agentic world. What else is there? And so this presentation is to share that experience, share that thinking, show some of the new infrastructure pieces. This is just, Neon is a database. We needed databases before. We need them now too. But there are other, completely new pieces of infrastructure that are emerging, specifically for the world of agents. And then we can also debate why this is happening. Okay, so what is changing? So what is changing obviously is like AI. Okay, AI. And so we have now agents, and we have agents that build stuff, that help you build stuff. So how many people use AI for coding? Yeah, yeah. And then we also using AI to get stuff done, right? So we have agents that have us build software, Cloud Code or something like this. We have agents that help like write emails to us and analyze, look at Slack channels and summarize things and whatnot. So in the world of kind of like dev tools, right? And Neon is a dev tool, Vercel or something like this is a dev tool. We have a new user, which is an agent, right? That agent needs to accomplish a task or build software. And everything is accelerating. It's accelerating. We hear agents. And if you are an infrastructure provider, basically you're either on the agent consumption path, and therefore you're winning, or you're missing out. You're missing out for whichever reason. And if you're missing out, then tech industry is unforgiving for this kind of stuff. You will become history, right? So. So what is an agent? Agent is something that accomplishes a task, today via AI. And again, there are two types of agents, right? That agents that allow you to help you to do work, kind of like your regular day-to-day work, and then agents that build things, right? There's Cloud Code, Cursor, all the good stuff. And we'll talk about both. So one thing that I keep thinking about, and it was triggered by this guy, this Italian dude right here. That's me talking to Michele, who is the president and then whatever head of AI at Replit. We were talking about exactly the same subject, like what's happening with the infrastructure software in the world of agents. What he was saying is like, hey, we're probably going to hit peak apps very, very soon, right? Replit, helps you build things. It's a vibe coding tool. There's Replit, there's Lovable. Of course, you can, build a new app from scratch with one of those tools or with Cloud Code or Cursor, whatever. Like there's lots of ways to build a new app these days. And therefore, we have lots of new apps. But what he's saying is he's trying to see beyond that. And he's saying that we might hit peak apps sometime soon, and from there we will maybe some of those agents, whatever I'm talking about, agents that build things and agents that do work, they might converge, and an app may be generated just as part of an interaction, and then potentially either retained or thrown away. And if this is happening, right, we don't need to build a new app, deploy an app, and keep it there. Maybe they will just be created on the spot. And then you pin it or something, and it will become just an artifact of Claude OpenAI. I don't know. This might happen. And there was a fairly provocative thought from somebody who is, whose whole business is in creation of new apps. But we haven't hit big apps yet, right? So this is what's happening with GitHub. Right, the number of commits on GitHub grew 10x between 2025 and 26, right? So this is the fastest GitHub has grown probably almost since the beginning. Obviously, it's much easier to 10x something that's small, but it's kind of remarkable that the default code repository of the world had a 10x growth in the number of commits in just 1 year. So it's kind of incredible. It's also I don't know who's experienced that the quality of service of GitHub really went down, and well, maybe it's a good thing. And the reason it went down is actually two. One is AI, but the other one is they decided while this is happening, they decided to migrate to Azure. That's an inside baseball information. So migrations, they're risky. they're risky, and especially as the 10x growth is happening. Okay. Now this is Neon stats. 80% of new Neon instances, and Neon is just Postgres, right? So this is the number of Postgres instances are created by agents. My recent stat is that's about I forgot what it's. I think it's 60 Postgres instances a second are now created on the Neon platform, which adds up to 8 million a day. And a lot of them are created by agents. You will see that there's also a way to create, branches. And agents, as they build software, they need some sort of sandbox environments. So they create those branch is another Postgres instance that is attached to the same storage. And then they throw them away. So there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of creation and destruction of Postgres instances that are happening on the platform. This is of the last year. I just reused the slide. We probably have that at 90%. And here I'm only counting like actual Postgres instances, not branches. But if you start counting branches and say, hey, branches are AI created, that number will be like 99% probably. Okay, we're here, right? So now if you build infrastructure, and that's what I mean by the fact that either you're part of that agentic automated loop or you're not. And that divides infrastructure technologies or infrastructure companies into what is called haves and have-nots. So either you're succeeding in that or you don't. Neon has a competitor which is actually ahead in both by about 3x, which is Supabase, and then both Neon and Supabase are in this agentic consumption loop. Anybody else in the database market is outside of this, and Neon and database are succeeding for the operational database market, and everybody else is trying to get on that loop. But not capturing that. So what else is happening? So every company is now, every progressive company, of course they're using Cloud Code and Cursor, like that's old news now. But now they're trying to create a tier, maybe it's called AI Factory or something like this. But, Cloud Code is kind of like single tenant. In a way, right? It lives in your terminal, and you're like operating it yourself with a developer. Yeah, the next obvious step is to, put all that thing into the cloud, so you can start making prompts from the web, from your phone, and create a tier that some sort of memory tier that cuts across. So now you can orchestrate things in parallel. So this is an example from RAMP. It's very public. Internally at Databricks, we have a system called Isaac. It's not a public name; it's an internal name. But it's kind of the same thing. So you can either go and trigger Isaac from your terminal, and in this case, it's just Cloud Code, which is connected with and tons of skills, and then MCP connectors are written there, so everything is kind of prepackaged, and there is a standardized cloud environment for this. But the important thing that you can also access this from the web. So you go there, and so now you can like trivially kick off lots and lots of coding tasks in parallel, and you don't need to babysit it in your terminal or and have like multiple sessions open at the same time. They're all on the web. So this is happening as well, and we're trying to automate ourselves as engineers. So, okay, so now if you build infrastructure and you build infrastructure for agents, how is it different from building infrastructure for humans? So in many ways, agents are similar to humans. So if you do a good job of building infrastructure for humans, chances are a lot of that will be reused. So, if you're a developer and you're like, well, I need, a piece of infrastructure, this or that, and I'm talking about like hosting infrastructure, storage, compute, message queue, whatever, go on AWS and look at 1,000 services there. You need one of those. Which ones will you gravitate towards? Well, as a developer, you like something that other people use as well. You trust those things more if they're popular, because information is readily available, expertise readily available, and if many people use it, it's got to work, right? So large ecosystem helps. So specifically, and so humans are like, okay, let's go online, go on Stack Overflow, research things. So I'll talk about what agents do in this situation. The second thing is like developer experience. So what is developer experience? Well, it's well-defined APIs, tools do what they say they do. They don't overload abstractions. They have very well written documentation. Ideally, consumption is serverless. Like humans prefer that. I don't need to think about like 3x large or 2x, like all of that kind of goes away. And then also developers, especially individual developers, they like when there's a free tier, right? So I don't want to like swipe credit card just to try it out. Like, let me try it out, and then we'll talk about if I'm going to use it and pay my hard-earned dollars for you later. Finally, seamless onboarding and open standards, right? The more open, the better. The more connectivity to open source, the better. Why? Well, again, there's like trust, and then if something doesn't work, I can go fix it. So those are, and in a way, agents like that too. Like humans like it, but agents like this too. But then there are things that are different from agents and humans. The first thing is kind of volume. And agents make 10 to 100 more tool calls. What's a tool call, right? Like, I'm provisioning something. Oh, I'm making API calls as part of my development process. So agents that build things, well, actually, agents that do things, they all connected to tools, and obviously because it's a machine, they can and they do make a lot more tool calls than humans. So now, how do agents discover things? A lot of the discovery is in the training set. So that's where if you have popular technology, I don't know, Postgres, right? Agents already know how to use Postgres because it's in the training set. But then the rest of the stuff, right? So maybe in our particular case, it's Postgres as a service. So there's custom API. There's lots of things. So the more you can give that information to agents via Markdown, via MCP, via skills, the easier it is for agents to discover that. So you must invest into making it consumable to agents. And then there's like new requirements. So those are kind of like new requirements for the existing infrastructure. So Postgres is a database. We needed these databases before, but the ones that Neon or Supabase, our competitor, you can consume it because the documentation is built for agents, and there are all these MCP servers out there, so they can consume it better. Here's an example. On the left side, this is pricing for humans, right? It's right here. This is pricing for agents. All right, it's something happened. It's a Markdown file, and that's how it's packaged, and it's kind of wild. So you basically like trying to simulate agentic loop through like using LLMs, and then like they make recommendations, and you're like, oh shit, I'm missing that bit. So you go and publish things. So lots of kind of small things like this. And this is very real. This is Braylon. She's in San Francisco. She's a very prolific engineer. And she's saying if like your product cannot connect to my agent in some way, no chance I'm using it, right? Because like I'm not going to your product and figuring out and signing out. I'm just telling my agents go use that, and then the agent either uses or it doesn't. So here's another thing, and it's fairly profound. Agents make mistakes just like humans. And then when humans make mistake, they like eyeball things and like, or they test them, they push it through the CI/CD pipeline. But like, what do agents do? So an infrastructure can be stateful or stateless. And an example of a stateful infrastructure is obviously a database or something like Git. And then the stateless infrastructure is like, I don't know, some sort of compute, API calls, whatever. So two patterns there. The first pattern is instant backup and restore. Now, backup and restore is very databasey terminology. But if any other stateful system should allow you to, go and like create a checkpoint. I don't know, with Git, right? So with Git, you can do Git branch, and then start making changes. And it's like, no. Git stash. Like I don't want this thing. So it allows you to create a checkpoint, start doing work, and then you either like this work or you don't. If you like this work, you're moving on. If you don't like this work, you want to go back to the checkpoint that you've created. And so every stateful infrastructure, ideally, in the world of agents, should allow you to do snapshot restore. Very, very quickly, very, very cheaply. It's not an IT operation anymore. It's in your, agentic loop. So this now becomes bread and butter. That's something that we discovered at Neon. We have snapshot restore functionality. The second thing is kind of like this branching concept. And when I was talking to Michele, he's like, I wish every service had the ability to create a sandboxed environment, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a database. It could be like, I don't know, some web service with an API. But give me the ability to create a clone of, the whole thing. And in that clone, I can perform read and write operations. I can change things. And then some sort of way to, merge those changes or replay those changes in the kind of main branch. With Git, it's, we do this every day, right? It's Git branch and then Git merge. But now you want to apply that same pattern to all stateful infrastructure that's out there. We're doing this for database, but again, every internet service better have this thing because it makes the agentic lives easier and it allows you to parallelize things. So now instead of one branch, I want to have 1,000 branches because either I want to do the same work in parallel or I just parallelize work in general. So I think that pattern kind of really emerges, and I see it adopted very, very rapidly. So another thing in infrastructure is like agents force, I don't know, I call it vertical and horizontal. What I mean by that is the volume of things really increases. So let's just specifically give you guys an example of apps, right? So now we have a ton of tiny apps. Why? Well, creating new apps is so cheap now. Go to Replit, Cloud Code, couple prompts, you have an app. So if every app requires you some sort of fixed size infrastructure, I don't know, costs $10 or something like this a month, suddenly that adds up very, very quickly. So you need to figure out how to make, I don't know, sometimes people call it pay by the drink or something like this. The cost of each increment should be very low. So there's this, the lowest unit of consumption, ideally is just cents, right? It's like really, really cheap. But then you can make it up on volume. The important thing is that some of those apps may become popular. And so whatever's powering those apps needs to be elastic. And you don't know which ones ahead of time. So, we don't live in the world of like, let me build this big power plant or something like this, and to power this gigantic app. It's different. It's like lots of small things, but then some of them will grow. So now you need to build. What this means in practice is, if you're working on infrastructure, you need to build elastic and multi-tenant infrastructure with a very easy to consume low end that consumes it at volume, and the ability to take any one of them and grow very, very big. It's actually, at least for database, it's a big architectural challenge to make that possible. So we talked about agents that build things and agents that perform work. For those, so now we talked about general purpose infrastructures for agents. But what new kind of infrastructure do they need? There is the first one is like sandboxes. So in the past, what is compute? Compute is an AC2 instance or something like this, or like a VM. So you go somewhere, Amazon, Hetzner, whatever, and say, hey, give me a VM. What kind of VM? Well, 3x large, 4x large, whatever. Like there's a big menu of things. Now, if you listen to me earlier, lots and lots of small things. Ideally, those things just kind of auto scale. And you can make an API call, and because all this tool calling is happening so fast, you want to get a VM very quickly. So that's why we don't call it a VM. It is a VM, right? But we don't call it a VM because agents, right? So now we call them sandboxes. But what's different about it is, like, again, give me a sandbox quickly, because my agents are, creating so many of them because they're all robots. So now VMs are moving to sandboxes. Now they're making lots of connector calls because everything is a tool now. So now you need MCPs and you need some sort of MCP registries, because if this agent's all of a sudden starting to make lots and lots of calls on your behalf, well, there are security implications to this. I don't know. They will make mistakes. So you need to have some sort of proxy tier when all of that is happening. Agents need to have memory, right? So, a couple of years ago or a year ago, we were all building like RAG retrieval systems. But now it looks like, a new tier emerged, like memory, right? So I want to have some sort of context that live across my sessions. I want my agent to get smarter over time because it accumulates memory. I want to have organizational memory, right? Lots of developers or lots of people do work in an organization, and hopefully tomorrow it's easier to do similar kind of work than today. And then we have like event-driven loops. So those who've tried OpenClaw, this thing wakes up, checks stuff. So we have kind of heartbeat and event-based loop systems. And then which I think very relevant to Nebius is all of this infrastructure exists because we have this, token factories that are driving like intelligence, and everything becomes a tool to that intelligence. If you're in this world, you need to have an AI gateway so you can swap models very, very easily, and drive that stream of intelligence and work. The tracing stuff has also become super important. So a call into an LLM is kind of expensive, right? So tokens are expensive. So might as well capture everything, request, response, all the metadata associated with this, and have the ability to replay things. So, in the past, we have systems like Datadog and Grafana. The new world, we have systems like BrainTrust. I think I'm going to run like just a couple of minutes more. We have systems like BrainTrust, which again, we needed to have observability. We still need to have observability, but the kind of observability we need to have is changing. we build apps, so we need evals. We have today, or like yesterday, we had humans browsing the web. Well, now you want your agents to be able to surf the web, so that we have browser automation. And then I think another place that we're heading is authentication and payments. So authentication and payments should become agentic, and so those agents can make actions and payments on behalf of humans. So that's where kind of infrastructure around it is changing. So don't think about infrastructure just as like storage and compute. It's also services as well, services like auth, services like payments and whatnot. I'm going to highlight some of the companies that I find driving this innovation and changing infrastructure. When they talk about sandboxes, that's Modal. They also have this, I think it's the only one that has a GPU inside a sandbox as well, like if you need it. I like this company, Braintrust. Again, I have no relationship with those companies except for they're friends. But I'm giving you an example of next-gen agentic infrastructure. So this is a system of record for evals and tracing. So it's an next-gen observability system. And this is an example from Databricks. So this is like MCP registry, right? So what's next? I think the stuff that we haven't quite figured out is world-class auth and payments yet. So Stripe is going that direction. And then some auth companies are building agentic auth protocols. I think that if I, imagining myself being here next year, there's probably going to be a similar graph, very exponential, is all the payments, all the like transactions that are driven by agents rather than humans. Right now, the percentage of agentic transactions is still very, very low. All right, so I'm wrapping this up. So what are the general purpose properties of the infrastructure? Self-serve and elastic. It has agent-first connectivity, MCPs, skills, and whatnot. It has transactional properties, which is kind of warms my database heart, which is everything you build for agents should have a snapshot restore functionality and branches or sandboxes. And then it needs to integrate with the rest of the ecosystem. So we now building scaffolding in this world so that agents could be as powerful as humans, like it could do as many things as humans can do. And like often payments are still in the way, but they are rapidly being figured out. And now we can drive that loop a lot faster than humans can do. So happy building.